it kind of follows on with where we are here.
Oh, perfect.
Because as soon as we got in town, I went back to the university, and I went into my department. I'd graduated in journalism, and for some reason I had the deepest desire to own my own little weekly newspaper. To me it seems absolutely insane at this moment of my life, but I was so excited to think about it. And I walked in the office, and they went in to see the dean of the department, and he said, "Hey, I've been thinking about you." I said, "What for?" He says, "They want somebody to run those newspapers up in Brigham City. There's 2 newspapers up there, and I've told them I'd send a man up to take that over for them." And he said, "You're the man." And I said, "Okay." And so Mom and I moved. This was just 2 days later, packed what we had accumulated in our little black Ford that we bought with a Florida license on it, and drove to Brigham City and took over the newspapers up there, selling these newspapers, selling ads in it, and then writing articles for it, and doing the whole thing. In those days, they printed. We had 2 men there that did the printing, set the type. It was very, very basic newspapering. Now nobody would even know what it was like nowadays. But anyway, I was excited and thought I was in heaven. But we started going kicking around with friends and everything, and I decided, by gosh, we were there a couple of 3 years. We were there 2 years, and our oldest daughter was born. And I decided then that, maybe this newspaper isn't what I want to do. And the guys in Ogden at the Standard Examiner had been after me to come down there and go to work in the advertising department. And they had come across me because of my exposure up in Brigham, and they were up there trying to take the advertisers away from me to put it in the big newspaper, not the little dinky weekly newspaper. And they made us an awfully nice offer, so we moved down there and we got there, and we couldn't find a place that we liked, and we finally found a little home up in Ogden Canyon in a place called Valhalla. Cutest place to live, just what Mom wanted. And while we were living there, we were very close to Pine View Dam, and there wasn't much activity in those days on the lake. We used to go there on a Saturday afternoon. There'd be nobody there. And boy, did those days change in a hurry too. Well, even while we were there, it changed. But we still didn't have any money. We were living hand to mouth, which is like most everybody lived. But I wanted a boat.
Mm-hmm.
And we were up on Pine View one time, just walking around the lake up there. And there was this one boat there. We walked by, and lo and behold, that boat was owned by Karen's ex-boyfriend, the one with all the money. And I kept kidding her all of her life. I said, "You really must have loved me. Why would you go with a poor boy that didn't have a dime when you had this guy who was absolutely loaded?" But anyway, I decided we're going to have a boat. So I read in the yachting magazines there was a company called Glen L. Marine. They still advertise. And I wrote for a sample of the plans that they had, and they found just the one I wanted, a 16-foot boat that we put our own motor in. And luckily I went down and consulted with my father, who's an expert when it came to motors, and he said, "Well, if you buy the motor and get it down here to my shop," he says, I'll marine it for you, but he said, "I'll just make a list of everything I want because I want to let you buy all of it." And so we skimped on our meals those days to get all the parts for it, but we finally got the engineering parts, and I bought all the material from a place called Merrill's Hardware there in Brigham City. And we had met Carl and C-A-L-L. This is the guy that I'm talking about here. I'd met him. He ran a ironing shop selling iron rights, you know, rolling machines that do the ironing.
Mm.
And he had been raised on a farm just outside of town, and they had an old shed there. And he says, we only use that shed when the immigrants come through to pick the fruit here. And he said, my dad charges them some rent. He said, you can use it, why don't you go to, so I got working in that shed. And this guy, the guy who owned it, came down and he got after me. I said, well, your son Bill called, told me I could use it for this job. And he said, well, he was kind of impressed that I was making progress and it was being delivered like a boat. And so he was a gruff kind of a guy. And ironically, and this is adjunct, he and his wife was quite a charming, smooth lady. They ended up moving to Salt Lake City, and they moved in my mom and dad's ward, and they became the closest friends of my mom and dad until everybody died. Yeah, and he was just kind of a gruff sort of a guy, but he didn't kick me out, let me build it. So he built it and turned it over, and I had it. It was just a pattern, you know. You don't have to. It is just work. It isn't genius because they give you the patterns. You lay them out on the piece of wood and cut them out, and then put it all together again. But it was a little boat that was pretty good. And my dad put the motor together, and then my dad built us a trailer for it also.
Oh, wow.
And so we went and tried it out of Pineview. I didn't have a transmission in it, so when you start the engine, the propeller starts going. So you want to make sure you're pointed in the right direction when you hit the starter button. Get your boat going. But you know, we lived up in Ogden for 3 or 4 years, and we belonged to a couple of study groups up there, and every one of them would say, we've got to go up water skiing with you guys. Come on, take us up there. And I said, wait a minute, all you guys, don't you have boats or anything? No, it's only the rich people that have boats. I said, oh, I'm glad of that. And so Mom and we lived in this place in Valhalla, and it was just an absolute paradise. I mean, it was really just a little, very small home. Anyway, we used that little boat for all the time we were up there, and we brought it down to Salt Lake. Never did take it to I've used it in all the reservoirs around here, but I decided, well, I better buy a new boat. I was getting badgered on, so we bought a new boat back. I can't remember when, but about when Devin went on his mission. So when would that have been? I was probably in, and it doesn't matter. But anyway, we still have that boat, still ready to go. And it's
so you had the boat that you made. Did all of your kids ride on it? How long did you have it for?
I don't think any of our kids rode on it. I think that we had, while we were in Ogden, we did a lot of skiing, and then when I moved to Salt Lake, we were mainly doing work, and that was when, you see, Sean was born in Salt Lake, and all of our skiing with that boat was done before we got to Salt Lake. But I kept the boat, and it was out there at the shed where Sean's got that shed out there. When we built that shed, I had that little boat in there, and I finally, just in recent years, I brought it out and had a little ceremony, and I took my backhoe that's out here, and we just pounded it and loaded it all in the garbage and threw it away. Because, but of course, by then you know, we'd gotten a more sophisticated boat and we were able to do it. So, but anyway, I built a boat and we used it and had just, but the motivation was the day we were up at Pine View with no boats out there and only one boat, and it was the boat of Karen's boyfriend. I tell you.
That's some good motivation.
And we just waved at him. We didn't stop and go up to him. We just waved as we walked by. Okay, now, what was the other one we were going to talk about?